So here's a question. Is there a sort of Buddhist approach when talking to people who expect that we look at them and see the illusion they are creating as being the essence? Maybe best to just avoid? It's funny, this question came up today, and it's come up recently. Something I've been thinking about. Well, sort of to beat around the bush, to flush it out a little bit. I think it's quite interesting and worth examining the fact that in general this is what we do, and this is why people who have done meditation practice find it very tiresome, and often become very agitated or distressed or upset when they have to be around people again. And often people get the impression that when they've gone to practice meditation, they come back and there's something wrong with them. They start to doubt their practice, and everyone else really certainly doubts their practice and said, "What have you done? You've gone and brainwashed yourself. You're not the same person you were." And they can't be in social situations. They feel awkward and agitated and so on. But the interesting thing here, and I think the answer that should clarify it up quite a bit, is that that's because they're no longer, I want to use a swear word, but they're no longer BSing themselves. They're no longer lying to the other person or lying to themselves. They're no longer pretending. They're no longer buying into it. Or at that time they're not. Now if they go on and on, eventually they're going to either buy back into it, which would be the case if they haven't done really intensive meditation or haven't really come to change the way their mind works, or they're going to become more skillful at avoiding problems, more skillful in dealing with the situation. Because it's not easy. It's not easy to be true to yourself and still not have people think of you as a freak. When I first started meditating, when I came back home, I was, I wasn't, I was sure that I had found something great and that this was what I wanted to do, but I couldn't figure out how to incorporate it into my life. I mean, it was difficult. Here I was surrounded by people who, from my point of view, were crazy, right? We're all messed up. But when they looked at me, I was the one who was totally messed up to them. So they would, when they would yell and when they would scold and complain about me, call me say all these bad things. You're like a zombie. Why don't you, can't you see that you've been brainwashed? Because and so on. I would just close my eyes and go back to meditating, rising, falling, and they would get so angry. But it was like that. It was like I know what I'm doing is right, so I'll just go back to doing it. And it created all sorts of difficulties and problems. So that's not answering your question, but it hopefully is kind of setting the tone here for what we're talking about. The approach, I think, is just something you learn over time. And rather than talk about what is the actual approach, so maybe I can give some tips. I think it's more important to just caution that as you learn how to deal with people, that don't buy into the idea that most important is to fit in, because this is where we lie to ourselves and to other people. Most of our interactions are just some people want us to say certain things. They'll talk about how great they are, and of course they want you to say, "Oh yes, you're great," right? And this is why people fight, because one person says, "I'm great," and the other person doesn't say, "Oh, you're great." The other person says, "Oh yeah, well, I've done better than that," and then they get angry and they fight, right? Because who wants to sit there and compliment another person all day, right? We have our own defilements and we get bored at what they say. So the only way to fit in with each other is to lie and to play up to each other's defilements. Otherwise it leads to fighting and argument. That's why family members end up fighting a lot, or can end up fighting because they stop playing up to each other's defilements, and they go the other way, and they get bored of it, and they don't feel the need uh, to coddle the other person or to pander. What is the word? And so they get into argument. So don't buy into it, and watch yourself very carefully, because it's a lot easier to just lie and not exactly tell lies, but become fake again, and to pretend and to convince yourself that you do enjoy these stupid things that people are talking about, and go back to talking about useless things, and if you still have the craving for those things, then actually getting involved in talking about them. So you have to learn a way to not do that. And I think the easiest or the most important part, and again it's easier for me because I'm not in these situations. I don't, I'm able to avoid them. That's, I wear the robe and people are like, oh, well, it's okay, he's a monk, right? If he doesn't talk, if he doesn't do this or that, then, well, we understand because he's a monk. And we may not agree, but there's no expectation there. So they won't get angry at me when I say I can't go dancing or so on. But I think an important part is to keep quiet, and to only talk when people have questions for you, and to keep your answers simple, and to be more of an example than a teacher, because every time you open your mouth you're going to say something that makes you sound funny, right? You're going to say something that is totally out of whack with what they'll be like, hey, don't you think it's great? Don't you think this movie is great? Or don't you think this, like, they show you something, isn't this beautiful, right? And you're like, well, what do I say? I mean, maybe I'm attracted to it, but I know that beauty is this illusion, and it only is based on attachment, and I don't want to be attached to things. So what do you say? Well, this was always funny. People ask in Thailand, they love to ask, how's the food? They don't ask how's the food, they say, is it delicious? And what do you say? I mean, if you say it's delicious, it's like encouraging, or it's really embarrassing to have to say that something's delicious. Well, yeah, I like it, but that's my own attachment. That's not a good thing. It's not a compliment to say your food is delicious. It's admitting my own faults. So it's difficult. It's difficult. I would say the most important thing, because eventually you'll learn how to do it. Eventually you'll find a way to fit in. Meditation changes who you are, so it upsets that routine, or it upsets your habit. It's scrambling the eggs, right? You can't make an omelet without breaking the eggs, right? So here we're breaking the eggs. The breaking the eggs is the bad part. But once you get used to this new way, you'll eventually find a life that works with it. For many people, eventually that'll be becoming a monk. For sure it will be. Either that, or they'll just plod along. Some people will go back and give up their meditation practice. There are many ways. But to do it in you eventually, even in your own life, you will come up with a way, and some things will change. Maybe you'll lose a lot of friends. I lost a lot of friends. I don't have any of my old friends left. Maybe one or two. But I have a lot of new friends, and so your life will change. I guess that's another advice I would give, is not to be afraid of change, and never delude yourself into thinking that you have some connection to this or that person. When it's time to let them go, let them go, and your environment will change. The people you surround yourself with, the people who come to connect with you, will change. I mean, look at who my friends are. You're all my friends, and some of you I've never even met. But and the people here, Manju is my friend. Manju is this guy who helps in the monastery. And, who would have ever thought that he and I we spend a lot of time together, and we're from two totally different cultures. But that's life. Maybe we have some connection in the past, maybe we don't, I don't know. What's important is that we're here now, and I'm not going to try to change that, or I would never look at Manju and say, oh, he's just a worker here, my real friends are back in Canada, or so on. I say, no, here I am with Manju, and he's a person, and he may not be meditating, but I will give him my attention and try to do my best in regards to his life, in regards to our relationship, because it's here and now. For sure, moving from one country to another, it really opens you up to these kind of things.